Everybody's on their feet, and they all got their money's worth tonight.
Behind me is the 1952 U.S. Air Force Grumman SA-16A Albatross plane crash site.
Sunrise in Death Valley is always something special. Soft pastels of the early morning paint the distant mountains, and there is a stillness that is difficult to describe. Getting up early was especially important for me on this day because I wanted to beat the heat of the afternoon. And there was a lot of climbing and descending to get to this site.
There's little patches of snow or hail. So you go from the bottom of Death Valley where it's hot, and then it gets cold up on the mountains above real quick. If you're wondering what the conditions are like, the wind chill is cold enough that I'm debating putting my gloves on. And maybe it's time to put the toque back on because the air is pretty chilly actually, and the wind's cutting through me. Now that I've made it to the ridge, across this big gulch in between, in the distance I can see the plane crash site, which is still an awfully long way away. Up and over that peak is probably the easiest way to get there. I've now hiked up to 6,200 feet, which is about 1,890 meters. I see a little geological marker.
Fighter aircraft from Edwards Air Force Base use the Upper Mojave Desert and Death Valley for training, even low-level flying. And I thought it was fitting that two modern jets flew over my head as I aimed to reach this historical plane crash site.
So I've now reached the highest point, which was quite a slog to get up here. It's at least 7,280 feet, which is over 2,200 meters. It's pretty high and pretty breezy up here. But from here, I gotta follow the ridge and drop down probably 200, maybe even 300 meters, 1,000 feet below me is the crash site. So up and over the top, down this ridge, spend some time there, and then I gotta slog all the way back up. Sometimes I enjoy the hiking, sometimes it's really just a slog, and this one's pretty sloggy. Ammo box here. did this come from? Oh wow. There's 2 canteens of water. This one's empty, but one actually has water in it. It's like an emergency cache. Down in here, the last date is March 17th. Jason. There's a bag of nuts, a lighter, survival food. What is this? Never forget where you came from, never forget who you are. A map of Alaska, a trident. I have no idea what this is. Sensodyne toothpaste. Yep, that's very useful. Right before you get to the plane crash site, it gets pretty steep and it traverses under some cliffs. The rocks are all loose and there's cliffs below you, so there is a little bit of exposure. And then pop, it's right there in front of you. And it is in a crazy location. I don't think I've ever seen a plane crash in a location this steep and rugged and rough. Like, it's sitting almost on its side, just in a twisted heap of metal. It is gnarly. Like, I mean seriously gnarly. I'm glad that no one died at this site. There were 0 fatalities because it already feels eerie enough. The metal is softly creaking with the wind. And even though I'm in the blazing sunshine, this whole place just has a eerie, creepy feel. It took off from Mountain Home Air Force Base, Idaho, en route to San Diego, and over Death Valley, one engine failed. After one engine failed, the 6 crew abandoned the aircraft, jumped out, and it continued flying until it crashed into this peak in Death Valley. I was just sitting here having a snack, and as I looked at how the aircraft is lying on the slope and the orientation, my intuition tells me that the right wing clipped that ridge just on the other side of the ravine, and with one wing sheared off, it just smacked into the mountain on this side. Just boom, smacked straight into it.
This Albatross, registration 51-001, was part of the 580th Wing of the Air Resupply and Communications Service, and not just Air Force, part of the CIA Air Unit. The reported time of the crew abandoning the aircraft was 1830.
And this airplane better not move while I'm underneath it. Here's some windows on this side, and the U.S. Air Force logo.
According to Death Valley's first official historian, Kimberly Solinsky, after one engine suffered a violent blast, with all the power in the remaining engine, they were still losing altitude a rate of 500 feet per minute. The decision was made to bail. They jumped at 9,700 feet and deployed parachutes. The 6 crew actually landed approximately 14 miles north of Furnace Creek, which is miraculous because there are plenty of more remote areas in Death Valley, very far from any civilization. 2 crew members were injured on landing.
That door that had the middle of the Air Force logo, that's probably the door they jumped out of. That's probably the door where they exited the aircraft mid-flight with only one engine running.
This was on the 24th of January 1952 and in winter. This arid desert is pretty cold, average temperature near 40 degrees Fahrenheit or 4 degrees Celsius. The crew that walked to the ranger station at Furnace Creek arrived about midnight. The search for the plane wreckage took a couple days. It was spotted from the ground with a telescope on January 26, 1952.
There is metal debris and scraps of twisted metal spread all over this site. I mean, up the slope by the cliffs, all the way around, down below it, leaving a trail all the way down into the steep ravine. There's metal and bits of equipment everywhere. Most of it's so twisted it's hard to identify any objects. Here's one of the radial engines, and one of these was the culprit of the emergency. I don't know if it was the left or the right. One of these engines was the issue.
The Grumman Albatross was a belly lander amphibian aircraft that could land on water or on land. Some versions of the SA-16s were trifibian and equipped to land on water, tarmac, or snow.
I got a cool shot lined up here using the tail end of the aircraft to frame the highest peak in Death Valley National Park. Telescope peak in the distance, which has some fresh snow on it. So I think that's a cool shot because we got the plane crash and then all these layers of dry mountains and then the snowy high mountain in the far back. I just think that's cool framing. So Town Peak is a relatively flat mountaintop, so it's not that spectacular of a climb, but the views over Death Valley are pretty good, and being able to see Mount Whitney and Eastern Sierras, that's pretty cool. So that's why I'm going to count Town Peak, and it was quite a lot of work to get up here. Round trip is probably going to be almost 8 hours. I'm going to count Town Peak, but let's get down. The elements just wear you down. On the way down here, I'm getting blessed with some cloud cover, which is nice and cool and keeping me out of the relentless sun. Imagine later towards summer, it'd be a much different experience just baking in the heat and the sun. But I'm really thankful for this cool cloud cover. A little bit of relief in Death Valley.